Enigma depravatio est. Enigma crudelitas est.
All right, here we go. And action. I've always been fascinated by the future. Can you step back a half step? But I also loved imagining past worlds and what the people were like. Okay, move forward slowly. Look in the second window just a little bit as you go by. When I was in high school, I was fascinated by ancient Egypt, by the Greeks, by the Romans, and Atlantis. And I think that underneath this myth, this parable, there has to be something historically that happened. And cut.
Welcome back, my fellow seekers. I agree with James Cameron. There is something to be said about this legend, but going by just one legend alone may not be enough to solve this enigma. We have to look at other legends for clues that might support my hypothesis of Eden in Egypt, with an anthropological methodology and not a literal interpretation of these individual legends. So we can't let nationalist viewpoints get in the way. So I think one legend that might point to supporting my hypothesis is the legend of Dwarka, which goes like this. In Harivamsa, Dwarka is described as largely built on submerged land, released by the ocean. The city was the former sporting ground of the king of Rahivataka, called Dvaravati, which was squared like a chessboard. Nearby was the mountain range of Rahivataki, the living place of the gods. The city was measured by Brahmins. The foundation of the houses were laid, and at least some of the houses were built by the Yadavas clans. It was built by Vishwakarma in one day, mentally. It had surrounding walls with 4 main gates. Its houses were arranged in lines, and the city had high buildings, made in gold, which almost touched the sky, and could be seen everywhere like clouds. It had a temple area with palace for Krishna himself, which had also a separate bathroom. It was a very rich city, and the only city on earth which was studded with gems. He besieged the city with a large army, O best of the Bharatas, disseminating with outlying parks and gardens. The palace, along with their observatories, towering gateways and surrounding walls, and also the public forums. From his excellent Vimana, he threw down a torrent of projectiles. A fierce vortex arose and blanketed the entire area with billowing dust, according to the Bhagavata Purana. On the same day that Krishna departed from the earth, the powerful dark body Kali age of vice, descended. The oceans rose and submerged the whole of Dwarka, according to the Vishnu Purana. The sea, which had been beating against the shores, suddenly broke the boundary that was imposed by nature. The sea rushed into the city. It coursed through the streets of the beautiful city. The sea covered up everything in the city. I saw the beautiful buildings becoming submerged one by one. In a matter of a few moments, it was all over. The sea had now become as placid as a lake. There was no trace of the city. Dwarka was just a name, just a memory. The Masala Parva of the Mahabharata. As you know, I don't take these legends too literal, because we know Dwarka was established as the capital of Saurashtra by the Aryans and during the Puranic period, who mixed with the hunter-gatherer tribes of the Dravidians, who in turn have African ancestry like all of us. As explained in my Iran video, the Aryans came from the Persians, in turn also coming from Europe, and possibly the Aryans from Europe came from the Middle East again. Anthropologist YouTubers like Masonman have shown that migration routes dispersed from the Middle East. Geographic determinisms and genetic sequences can tell us where these dispersal waves came from. And places like Mohenjo-Daro was built over 2500 BC, which was possibly influenced by the Mesopotamian cultures, which is a hypothesis being supported by how Mohenjo-Daro was established. So many Indian legends probably were born from the Aryans as well as those who dispersed out of Mohenjo-Daro. So, but then you might say, oh, Enigma, but there's a lost city off the coast of Dwarka. Well, let's take a look at that lost city. The first archaeological excavation at Dwarka was done by the Deccan College, Pune Department of Archaeology and Government of Gujarat in 1963 under the direction of H.D. Sankaria. It revealed artifacts of many centuries old. The Marine Archaeological Unit of the Archaeological Survey of India conducted a second round of excavations in 1979 under the supervision of Dr. S.R. Rao, an emeritus scientist at the Marine Archaeological Unit of the National Institute of Oceanography. Rao has excavated a large number of Harappan sites, including the port city of Lathau and Gujarat. He found a distinct pottery known as the lustrous red wire, which could be more than 3,000 years old. Based on the results of these excavations, the search of the sunken city in the Arabian Sea began in 1981. Scientists and archaeologists have continued to work there for 20 years. Between 1983 and 1990, S.R. Rao's team came across discoveries that cemented the existence of a submerged settlement, but not a large city. In January 2007, the Underwater Archaeological Unit of UAW of the Archaeological Survey of India began excavation at Dwarka again. Alok Tripathi, superintendent archaeologist of UAW, said that the ancient underwater structure found in the Arabian Sea were not yet identified. We have to find out what they are. They are fragments, though. I would not like to call them a wall or a temple. They are part of a structure, said Dr. Tripathi himself, a trained diver. Dr. Tripathi had said, to study the antiquity of the site in a holistic manner, excavations are being conducted simultaneously both on land, close to the Dwarkan temple, and undersea, so that finds on both places can be correlated and analyzed scientifically. The objective of the excavation was to know the antiquity of the site, based on the material evidence. In the offshore excavation, the ASI trained underwater archaeologists and the divers of the Navy searched the sunken structural remains. On land, the excavation was done in the forecourt of the Dwarkan temple. Students from around the area contribute to the ASI archaeologists. In the Gulf of Combat, in 2001, students of the National Institute of Oceanography were commissioned by the Indian government to do a survey on pollution in the Gulf of Combat, about 7 miles offshore. During the survey, they did find what appeared to be small building-like structures of stone covered in mud and sand, covering about 5 square miles. Divers have collected block samples, artifacts, and copper coins, which scientists believe the evidence from an age of about 3,600 years, indicating most likely a connection with the Harappan civilization. Some of the samples were sent to Manipur and Oxford University for carbon dating, and the results created some suspicion since some of the objects were dated to about 9,000 years old, indicating most likely they were hunter and gatherer artifacts. Marine archaeological exploration off of Dwarka has also revealed some stone artifacts and structures. They are semicircular, rectangular, square in shape, and are in water depths about 20 feet. They are randomly scattered over a vast area. Besides these structures are a large number of varieties of stone anchors, have been noticed along the structures as well as beyond 20 feet in depth. These findings suggest that Dwarka was most likely a port settlement. The comparative studies surrounding these sites indicate that the dates of the structures of Dwarka may be between the historical period and the late medieval period. The underwater excavations revealed structures and ridge-like features. Other antiquities were also found. All the objects were photographed and documented with drawings. Explorations yielded structures such as bastion, walls, small pillars, rectangular and triangular stone anchors, semi-spherical single-hole stones which may have been based for flag posts, L-shaped edges of stones for proper grip and arresting wave actions on bastions, seals, inscriptions which may have been dated to about 1500 BC, pottery which have been dated to about 3500 BC, stone sculptures, terracotta beads, bronze and copper and iron objects. All this indicates most likely a connection with the Harappan civilization through trading. And all the stone artifacts were that of sandstone. The problem is people are correlating these settlements to the name of Dwarka, but that's not the name of these settlements. We don't know the name of these settlements. We can only judge it by the similarities to the materials with other civilizations like the Harappan civilization. So more likely, no, it's not called Dwarka. Even though the legend of Dwarka goes back about 3600 BC, around the time these artifacts are found. Yes, more than likely, yes, this legend was born from these civilizations, the Harappan civilization. But where did they get the legend from? So it could be passed down from something even older than the Harappans. So is Dwarka the Atlantis of the East? Yes, it's the legend preserved in the East, the same as the legend of Shambhala and Agartha that's been inherited by India. But this is not evidence of some lost advanced city-state, just another normal settlement with ranging dates from the hunter and gatherer periods up to the medieval periods. And both of these sites did not reveal key features of an advanced civilization, and that is megalithic architecture, specifically the freestanding column. Dwarka is just another fragmented legend with some major event that it's trying to memorialize. The same with the legend of Cholula in Mexico. Some of these legends may be exaggerated and changed to fit the new lands, but they are talking about something grand with some kind of catastrophe related to a supernatural and a natural event with similar themes, as Dr. Michael S. Heiser and authors like Ralph Ellis have pointed out in their research. So your expectations are a little low and narrow-minded. You find some sandstone blocks and some clay figurines dating to about 9000 BC, and then you jump to the conclusion that this is a lost civilization. No, these are just standard artifacts from a small seaport settlement or some kind of prehistoric settlement. James Cameron and his sponsored expedition runs into the same dilemma, which is why he wasn't too impressed with the Spanish Atlantis.
The search area, going back and forth, creating a well-defined map of the ocean floor. While we wait to identify a specific target, I decide to call James Cameron to update him on the latest developments.
Hey, Jim.
What's up, buddy? Where are you guys right now?
Southern Spain.
Going outside the Pillars of Hercules now.
That's right. It's been going pretty good. The first site we identified, they found this debris field. It could be pieces of columns, or maybe they're millstones. And then there's a new thing that came up, okay? This legendary diver in these parts that they nicknamed the Panther, El Pantera. And El Pantera shot this video footage on VHS, I think. When I got images of it at the beginning, I thought this is a joke, there's nothing. But when I watched still frame grabs, it looks like an underwater nuragi, like one of these Sardinia type. Like, it's big, it's got pillars, it's got steps, it's got circles. It's the Hollywood version of Atlantis.
You serious?
And it's supposed to be right here where we are.
Do you have good coordinates on it?
It's 35 meters deep between Barbate and Zahara de los Atunas.
This is a very sandy area. If you had like a submerged temple fully exposed, it would stand out to sonar. We'll go up and down the grid and we'll find Atlantis.
This sounds too good to be true. I'm not going to be up all night, hoping on this, but let's see what happens. I think you got to play out the lead for sure. All right, guys, great. I wish I was there on the ship with you right now.
I bet Cameron regrets wasting some of his Avatar money on that expedition. Then again, it was $2.7 billion, so might as well spend some of your hard-earned money on finding Atlantis. There's actually more evidence at the two sites in Dwarka than what they found in Spain. I mean, all they found was a 4,000-year-old anchor. What do you think, Alita?
I am not impressed.
See, if she's not impressed, I'm not impressed. Again, the problem is the methodology in taking the Atlantis story too literal. They start letting pareidolia take over instead of dredging up actual granite blocks. More than likely, these are just natural formations or a seawall left from some small port, like what they found off of Dwarka. Before you spend thousands of dollars on an expedition, you better have a good logical hypothesis on the legend. But maybe the anchor is a clue, because then they go on to argue that Atlantis could be Tartessos, or related to the word. Aristotle referred to Tartessos as a river near the Iberian region, but there's no major river near the Doñana area. More than likely, I bet the Iberians were migrant tribes who cross-pollinated with the Phoenicians, because their artifacts are looking a little Egyptian, and it makes you wonder if Egypt gave birth to the Iberian cultures through the Phoenicians, mixing with the natives of Spain. possibly giving birth to the name Tartessos to honor their ancient homeland of the Nile. Keep in mind the Levant was part of the Egyptian world order where the Phoenicians migrated out, giving birth to many of the languages in Europe, and the Phoenician language was born from the Egyptians. So maybe the stone anchors is from the Phoenicians, and this could explain how megalithic architecture spread into Europe all the way to the Celtics. So Tartessos and Dwarka might have a biblical connection if we look at things anthropologically. As the Dwarkan legend says, a fierce vortex arose and blanketed the entire area of the palace kingdom. So this must have been some kind of natural disaster, possibly an abnormal hurricane and tsunami. This wasn't some gradual sea rise because of the melting of the Ice Age, which is kind of what we see at Dwarka. That took thousands of years, but there may have been some initial catalyst, possibly a rain of comet fragments. I am starting to be skeptical of the Younger Dryas being the catalyst of these legends, because researchers like Rudolf Cooper and others have shown there is an unusual monsoon event that started around 8500 BC affecting the delta. Maybe this is when a surgical natural disaster struck Egypt, giving birth to the Atlantis legend, dispersing people out of the delta. It's possible Plato got the date wrong, or maybe there's a mixing of inspiration from the Younger Dryas extinction period and a more specific event from Egypt. This would fit better to the birth of civilization. Also, this is more in line with Göbekli Tepe's date between 9000 BC and 8000 BC. Possibly those who were dispersed out of the Garden of Egypt settled in Turkey and other places, spreading their megalithic knowledge into Europe. So maybe the lost city-state of Egypt, which I hypothesize is under Cairo, could go back to at least 9000 BC, but then was destroyed and lost until Neo-Atlantis or Egypt rose again around 4000 BC, recycling most of the materials. This is more in line with the current theory of Egypt's age. So there was a 4,000-year dormant period in Egypt, causing them to lose their history. For now, we are still waiting on the date of the Hiawatha crater. Also, clearly the Hindus are telling us that this has a supernatural connection with the gods, or simply the lower angels, coming down to Earth, and fucking up evolution pretty much. This could be the dark Kali age they're referring to. I think the whole Nile River and the delta flooded in a short period of time, like 40 days or less. This could explain the erosion on the Sphinx. But more than likely, if this was just a one-time short freak event, there would be hardly any evidence of water erosion. Eventually, wind-blown sand and the Nile's natural flooding and other small natural disasters like the Thera eruption and people will erode that water erosion. But I do think there might be evidence 20 feet below the Nile Delta soil. The legend of Dwarka states that the kingdom was located in a plain about 36 square miles. The Nile Delta is 12 square miles, depending if you're counting the Nile Valley below the main garden plain. So this could be another clue, but again, details change. I also think there might be a lot of megalithic ruins off the coast of the Nile Delta fan, such as at Heraklion off the coast of Alexandria. And I think some of these ruins could go back as far as the third Exodus, as I would call it, that being Moses' period, possibly caused by the Santorini Thera eruption, that caused a tsunami which led to the beginning of the sinking of these temple complexes, and then eventually the natural sea rising. And these artifacts may be the recycled megalithic ruins of the real Atlantis, just cut down to smaller pieces. For thousands of years, the different cultures that inherited and conquered Egypt tried to keep this Atlantean-like civilization alive, such as Alexander the Great. But every war and natural disaster slowly eroded Egypt's golden age into a handful of legends scattered around the world, with many changes because of the Chinese whisper paradox. This is the kind of evidence that James Cameron and I demand. Not some hunter-gatherer artifacts or a few port retaining walls and anchors. We need to see the faces of the gods and kings of Atlantis, and Egypt is the closest thing we've got. Now it's just a matter of evaluating our dating methodology, which I will address in a future video. So I would tell James Cameron, if you want to find Atlantis, look no further than the civilization that inspired you. Egypt, the land of the Garden of Eden. And I would encourage you to finance an expedition off the coast of the Nile Delta fan, and even in the Nile itself. I bet in the future more ruins will surface. Because as we speak, Atlantis is rising. This has been Enigma Seeker. Keep seeking those enigmas.
Enigma depravatio